minutes before we go. Well, we told everybody 10 a.m., so we're going to give them a couple minutes. You can't see me yet? This is the official first AMA of my life. So there's probably going to be some kinks that need to be worked out. And can everybody see me? Nobody? Somebody say something. Hello? Can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah.
One thing that we have to one thing I have to remember is that there is a slight delay. And so my wife, who's sitting to my left, she's going to be helping me with this process. And I often get really ramped up. And so she's going to rein me in. Right, Kylie? She's nodding yes. Hello, Mad Dog. I think there's a way I can make this thing pop out, huh? Pop out chat. Boom. I think that'll make it a little easier to see. What else? While we wait for other people to join, I am going to leave a poll because this AMA is not just about you guys asking me questions. I'm going to ask you some questions, so be ready for that. And one of the questions I have is, my publisher wants to do an audio version of my Wild Edibles book. This book right here. And so we're kind of in negotiation about that now. And my question to my audience is, how would you guys feel about me reading it versus somebody else reading it? I think the publisher wants somebody else to read it. I feel that maybe I should do it. Like, it's better when the author reads his own stories or her own stories. So this poll that I'm going to post right now is going to be about that. Let's try this. Boom. So if you guys can weigh in on that, I'd really appreciate it, because I'm just making all this up as I go. Would I be reading it? Angela says, would you be reading it word for word, or would you be adding information as you read? Probably reading it word for word. I mean, if you read an audiobook, I think the idea is that you don't edit while you read. So I would imagine I'd just read it word for word, but with my own, determination, pizzazz, that kind of thing. Oh, and the other hitch in the giddy up is I've never read a book out loud, so I don't know if I'm good at it yet. Chances are probably not. That being said, every morning my wife and I wake up, for the last year, we've been pulling a tarot card, and I've been reading those out loud. So I do have a little bit of practice under my belt. Sergei's already sweating. I run hot. And even though it's like 60 degrees in our house, no fan. Fan makes extra noise. All right, let's get into some questions. I have allocated an hour of time today. I have no idea how this is going to go. If it goes well, we'll do another one. And if it doesn't, then we'll just pretend this never happened. So if you have any questions for me, rapid fire. Otherwise, I'll just ramble about random stuff. Who's going to go first? Anyone? Outside right now, it's full on winter. It's like totally snowing right now. What happened after the Raw family website went down? Ooh, you just got right into it, didn't you? Well, yeah, I guess I've never really talked about this because I still don't really know what happened. My mom moved to Russia in 2014. She just kind of said, I'm over it. I'm going back to the homeland. And she just kind of left everything that was going. And that was her baby, her project. mostly. And so I didn't really know what to do with it. And slowly it just kind of all died one after the other. So I don't have a clear answer for it. I'm still figuring it out. But the short version is that once the master of Raw Family stopped working on it, then it just stopped getting published. And eventually I got sick of paying for everything. There's a lot of fees associated with running a website of that nature. And so I still own the domain name in, in the off chance that my mom might want to do something with it, but there's nothing there anymore. How did you and your beautiful wife meet? Okay, well, I love talking about how I met my wife. I was working on a project called I Want Abs in 2015. And one evening, my friend and I went to a restaurant called Harvey's Place in downtown Ashland, where we were going to eat some dinner. And our friend Chloe, our mutual friend Chloe, introduced me to this beautiful angel named Kylie. And I stopped cooking at home and started going there every night. And at first she played hard to get. She wouldn't go out with me, given in her defense, she was working like 60, 70 hours a week. But eventually she agreed to go on a date with me. And as she remembered yesterday, then I started obligating her to things. I was like, let's go to a concert. She's like, when is it? I'm like, 2 months away. And so, I guess I must have rubbed off. And eventually she moved in with me. And then 6, 7 years later, we got married. And that was in June 26th, 2021. I'm sweating like a pig over here. Every morning when I wake up, I take my dog Mari on a hike in Forest Park. We have a German wire hair pointer pup. And since we got her, I've hiked something like, it was 1,700 miles 2 months ago. So it's more than that now. And so every morning I get up, I go for a hike. And when I come back, I take a hot shower and then I run hot. So I usually end up sweating for like half an hour. And also now I'm doing a Facebook Live with lots of hot lights on me. So if I look sweaty, it's because I am. Okay, let's get to more questions. You have a nice voice. You read it. Cool. Hey, Angela. It says, we drank spruce needle tea this morning. It has helped with my son's cold. Are there any other conifers that we are not advised to use? So there are no absolutes in the wild edible realm. And this goes both in the direction of things like all of these plants are edible or none of these plants are edible. To the best of my knowledge, most conifers can be made into pine needle tea. So whether you're using spruce or pine needles or Doug firs or even cedar, I don't really recommend cedar as much because it's not as delicious. But you can make pine needle tea from all of them, and they all help colds and respiratory kind of ailments. The one caveat, though, is that if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, the literature says stay away from conifers. Don't. There's something in them that isn't good specifically for pregnant ladies or mothers who are breastfeeding. So long as your son isn't pregnant or breastfeeding, he should be fine with conifers. And kind of the last thing that I'll say on that is always do little tests on yourself. So try a little bit first. If it helps, you can go more, but just approach wild foods very cautiously so as to navigate around any kind of negative reactions. Make sense? Also, where is the best place to live in Oregon? My husband is in America and we want to move to the US one day, namely Oregon. Well, what should I say about that, Kylie? I think that's all subject to personal opinion. We really love Southern Oregon because this is our home. I spent 27 years in Ashland. My wife, Kylie, was born in Ashland. And now we live in the next town over, which is Medford. And we like Southern Oregon because our friends are here, our family's here. It's a very diverse region. We live in Zone 7, which is one of the most bountiful zones for growing stuff. And 2.5 years ago, we bought a gentleman's farm. We own 3 acres now. And the dream is to be as self-sustainable as possible, to grow as much of our food as possible, to make a mad laboratory for all things YouTube and wild edibles. And so for us, Southern Oregon is a great place, but I don't know. I don't really know what your guys' interests are, Angela. And so you might have to look around. My wife over here is nudging me and saying that the Willamette Valley is nice, and that's about 4 hours north of us, up the I-5 corridor. You're the best, homie. Learning so much from you. Thank you so much, Israel. Have you ever talked about putting wild edibles grasses in water and using for fertilizer? Mad Dog, I've never talked about that. I've never even looked into it. Maybe I should. Here Angela goes again. Good to know. We have a lot of spruce fir pine in northern. Where is SK? Is that Slovakia? What's up from Liverpool? My beautiful view. Welcome to the live chat. Zone 7. Cool. We are in zone 2 and 3. That's our dream too, to be less off the grid. Yeah, the pandemic really showed us how easy supply chains can be broken. And in a weird way, it also reset something in me personally that took me back to my roots, which was growing food, foraging more, just living off the land, observing nature. And I don't know how I forgot kind of that. I'm a very curious person by nature. And so after 20 years of talking about raw food and just food in general and working with food, I kind of got burnt out on it. And so I went on this quest of just curiosity where I started reviewing products on YouTube and exploring different topics and themes. And in the end, it's kind of like, who out there has read The Alchemist? It's one of my favorite books. I just reread it again, probably for the 10th time. And in The Alchemist, at the end, he realizes that maybe the treasure was where he was in the beginning. And so I'm kind of feeling like I'm doing that too, where I'm coming back to the foraging realm and really want to get my hands dirty, balance garden work and nature work with computer work, because editing is fun for me, making videos is fun for me, but it needs to be balanced with the natural realm. And so I'm pivoting my YouTube channel, and from here on out, after I finish one more project, I'm going back to foraging, homesteading, gardening, that kind of thing. Are there any fiddleheads to avoid eating? So yes, there are. And I'm going to revert back to the same answer I gave Angela. And that is any fiddleheads that affect your body negatively, you want to avoid. Because as a good forager, as an experienced forager, one of your main objectives is to not harm your body while you're foraging. And so when I was a younger forager, I would just say, just do it. Now, not really now, for the last 20 some years, I've been advocating just approaching all new food cautiously. When we start eating wild edibles as adults, we're essentially going back to experimenting with food, which is something most adults haven't done since they were kids. And so this, if you want to do it smartly, you have to do it cautiously. When you're a kid, for example, you are learning new foods, and you may try peanuts and realize that you have a peanut allergy, or you may try wheat and realize that you have a wheat allergy. And so your parents, they recognize these things and say, oh, my son or my daughter shouldn't eat these things. And so when you're experimenting in the wild edibles realm, you have to do that for yourself. You have to be your own parent. So despite Sergei saying in his book, here's all these plants that are edible and, you can use them in your cooking, I very much advocate in the book as well as in person that you have to try clover very cautiously the first time until you clear it for yourself. Same thing goes for fiddleheads. If you've never had fiddleheads before, just treat them all as potentially hazardous until you clear them and understand 100% that you can eat them with no ill effect. So that's my answer for that. Oh, Saskatchewan, Canada. There you go. Now I know. SK is Saskatchewan. And that's it. No more questions. I'll be honest. One of the reasons I'm doing this AMA is to get a better sense of who my audience is, because I am a very curious person. I do run a variety channel thus far. And so I talk about things like sprinter vans and kettlebells and, do product reviews and wild edibles. And so I've kind of lost my bearing as to who watches my videos. And I want to get to know my audience, because I realized 6 months ago that YouTube is a dialogue. All social media is a dialogue, right? So thus far, until that point, I was kind of screaming into a vacuum, just being like, hello. And then I realized that it's way more fun and works way better if you treat it as a give and take. So I make a video, then I read some comments, hopefully avoid the negative ones. And no, I'm just kidding. I can learn from the negative ones too, but get feedback from my audience. And that way we can both grow together. The reason I make videos is because every video is like a research project, and it enriches my life. And hopefully when you watch the videos that I make, it enriches your life too. Like when I remodeled my kitchen, let's use that one for an example. We bought this house, the kitchen was super rough, and we wanted to remodel it, but we didn't have the money to pay somebody to do it. So we decided to do it ourselves. And so I used YouTube as a way to get some free countertops and make an advertisement for this company that makes really awesome synthetic, like Duracell style. What are they called? They're called I forget now. It's like Corian, the brand, but it's Duracell. So they make beautiful countertops. Long story short, I'd never done anything of this nature, and I decided to just jump in full force and give it a go. And the hope is that when people watch that video, they also get motivated and inspired to try something they've never done. And so thereby lies the dialogue. I make a video, I try really hard. Maybe nobody cares, or maybe somebody watches the video and says, you know what? Maybe I can remodel my own kitchen. And then they give it a go. And then in an ideal world, they send me the link, and then I could watch it and be like, woo. Anyway, now I'm rambling. Back to the questions. Let's go. Am I going to do any more live tours? I hope to one day. The last 3 years have not been conducive to live touring. But I kind of have the suspicion that as we move out of the pandemic, there's going to be more need and more want for foraging all over the place. And so I'm definitely going to do some locally here in Southern Oregon. I've been scouting new areas and finding just absolutely awesome parks and forests where we can do workshops and wild edibles walks. In fact, I did one last summer called Forest Foraging that I recorded for YouTube. So you feel free to go check that out. But yes, I do plan to do more live tours, mainly during the summer months, because I want to talk about plants. I imagine most wild edibles are naturally organic and we can control what we grow ourselves, but what are your thoughts on organic produce when buying from stores? I think I can close the window now. Okay, so my stance on organic is such: it's better to eat organic whenever possible than conventional, because conventional food gets sprayed a lot, and those sprays are not good for our bodies. That being said, the term organic is kind of losing some of its potency, because as more major corporations get involved, they start prioritizing profits. It's like the story of time, right? The same story. And so then the word organic means less and less, and you have to come up with new terms like biologic or biodynamic. And so when I'm buying organic foods, that's always in the back of my mind. This is better than sprayed, but not necessarily the best. And anybody who's ever had their own garden can attest to this, because you can grow kale in your garden and it'll taste nothing like organic kale that you buy at the store. Or if you don't have a garden, you've probably been to a farmer's market where you've bought a bunch of kale from a farmer that's a small scale farmer. And you've probably realized that, wow, this kale has characteristics that store-bought kale just simply doesn't have. I call it almost like a three-dimensional flavor. In my wild edible cooking, as well as in cooking in general, I often talk about this concept of using all 5 basic flavors to make your food taste the most gourmet, most delicious. And those 5 major flavors are 1 B and 4 S's. So bitter, sweet, sour, salty, and spicy. These are all flavors that coincide with taste buds on our tongue. And so if you add a little bit of all of those flavors into your food, it's going to maximize the taste and it's going to make it taste the best possible. And so I feel that when you're buying store-bought food, it's lacking some of those 5 basic flavors. So it's not a 3-dimensional flavor. Thus, it's lacking in something. So that's why I grow my own food with my wife's help. That's why I advocate for wild edibles, because it does not get better than wild food. Period. That's a big, bold claim, but I'm going to make it. I've been making it for years. And now that we're gardening, I really get to see, I get to do tests on a daily or weekly basis where, for example, I grow, in one of my videos last year, I grew okra, which is, a southern vegetable that people put in soups. And I grew it right next to its wild edible brother, common mallow. And I got to really examine, like, the okra got eaten by bugs pretty quickly. So it was weaker genetically than the mallow, which the bugs left alone. Then I started examining the roots. I wanted to see how much longer the wild roots were versus the cultivated roots. And I figured out that okra roots are about this long and common mallow roots are 6 feet long. In fact, I almost threw out my back when I was trying to, on camera, pull out common mallow because the roots were so long. And what that translates to is they're able to go below the depleted topsoil and bring more vitamins and nutrients, more minerals into the plant. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but organic is better than conventional, and wild or garden fresh is better than organic. Let's get to some more questions.
Right chance is the next one.
Say that again.
Right chance. I'm glad you came back. You all started the green smoothie revolution. In my opinion, communication, editing, and homesteading has been you, right?
This pop-up is kind of really small. Here, let me try and make it bigger. Give me pointed out. Oh, right chance. I'm glad you came back. You all started the green smoothie revolution. In my opinion, communicating, editing, and homesteading has been your right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you saying that, and that will give me some more drive to keep doing what I'm doing. You know what's interesting?
That was a question.
Oh, that was a question, but I'm not hearing the question.
Like that's been your realm, correct?
Oh.
Yes.
Yes, I think that has been my realm. Homesteading, foraging, and that kind of thing. And where I went wrong probably is that when YouTube first started, everybody told me that there was no way that I could make anything from doing that, including my parents. And so that kind of deterred me. And now I'm coming back around and seeing that that's probably not accurate. And I should have just started doing that from the beginning. Though I do believe, like the singer Lori McKenna says, that happy people don't fail, they learn. And so I learned so much by taking this immense journey all the way around and into every nook and cranny of YouTube. And I feel like it helped me perfect my skills and helped me get to the point where now I'm going to be fully focusing on this Wild Edibles Test Kitchen cooking show. I have 3 episodes already on YouTube. And since I published those episodes, basically I realized that they're very labor intensive. I have to just drop everything and focus more on that. But also they require skills like vlogging and being clear and learning how to communicate to people clearly. And these are all things that I learned through my journey. And so hopefully, if my assumption and hypothesis is accurate, all of those skills will now be applied to foraging, and I will make a better end product for everybody watching. It's like starting babies on different foods, only one at a time and only a little bit at a time. Yes, Pamela, you're correct. What are the best kettlebells to buy? This comes from M. Low. The best kettlebells, hands down, are called Pro Kettlebells out of Seattle, Washington, or a suburb. They're called Pro Kettlebells, and I did a video review about them. The reason I think they're the best is because, first and foremost, they're competition kettlebells, which means that every kettlebell is the exact same size and shape, and the only thing that changes is their density. So as you go up in weight, the kettlebell becomes denser and thus heavier. And the reason it's important to have the same shape and size is because as you get stronger, you're throwing around something that is familiar to you, and so your form doesn't change. And the reason that pro kettlebells are the best, in my opinion, is because they've perfected the shape. And so they made this thing that's not only round, but it has peaks and valleys. And the peaks and valleys act like training wheels, where when you swing a kettlebell or clean or snatch it, your hand is forced to land in the correct position. Otherwise, it lands on a peak and it's really painful. And so if I were to do it again, I would completely invest in pro kettlebells. But since I already have 30 kettlebells made by Kettlebells USA, which is another competition kettlebell brand, I'm just going to keep those and just marvel, enjoy the 2 pro kettlebells that I have. So that's my 2 cents on that. I came across your channel 4 to 5 months ago. Love your content, no matter what it is. Very much appreciate it. Appreciate your knowledge in all aspects that you've shared so far. Israel, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. As human beings, I think we're like, to quote Shrek, we're like onions. We have layers. And one of the things that I'm fighting is that there's this belief that you have to specialize. You just have to talk about the same thing ad nauseum over and over and over again. And that just has never been fun for me, because I did it in the raw food movement for 20 years. I talked about food ad nauseum, and then I needed a break. I burnt out. It was like I had one lengthy career, much, at a very young age. And so then I just needed to go and try and talk about new things. And as I move forward, I do still have that in the back of my mind, where I'm going to be talking about foraging more. I'm going to be talking about homesteading and gardening more, but probably 100%, I'm also going to be infusing it with other interests that I have, whether that be motorcycle riding or dog training. I have this wonderful puppy in my life now that has completely changed my life. I'm just going to be throwing that in there because I don't know how to do it differently. And I think that most human beings, we have these passions that make our eyes light up. And I've learned over and over again in life that when you get people talking about these things that they're excited about, it's exciting on the receiving end. So thank you. I appreciate that you like the diversity of my content. I'm going to specialize a little bit more, but I probably will still be an onion. Do you still salsa dance? Absolutely. My wife, when we met, she was not a dancer. Well, she was a dancer, but she forgot she was a dancer because she danced through high school, and then kind of life happened. But I've been a lifelong salsa dancer, and I've been trying to dance with her this whole time, and she's been putting it off, saying, "Oh, I'll do it once I finish graduate school. I'll do it once." What were some of your other excuses? I don't remember anymore. Finally, last May, one of my friends opened a dance studio 2 miles from our house. Shout out to Sarah and Galino from Sarah Lino Dance Studio. And I was like, Kylie, we literally don't have an excuse. We can start going there after work. And it's just a fun thing that is both exercise, connection to other people, connection to ourselves. And it's just damn fun. And so we've been salsa dancing ever since. Here in Southern Oregon, we also have salsa at different wineries in the summertime. And that is just a hoot. It's like you go, you can dance if you want to. You can listen to a live band that's playing. Shout out to Salsa Brava. Or you could just drink some wine and watch people dance. And so we are actively doing it. And in fact, we have a gym in our garage, which we built out, and the gym has mirrors. And so we've been dancing in there just for us, for the two of us. My wife's pointing. So I am a wild edible eater. I make homemade fertilizer for my garden that works much better than petroleum based. I turn my entire garden into a giant worm farm with sweet wild grass and wild edibles and mint. Mad Dog, we need to know more about this. Make a video, make a post. I want to know more. That sounds really cool. I live in Portland metro area and would love to meet with you. My 8-year-old daughter and I watch your videos and are learning so much. Thank you so much, Israel. I have plans to, like I said, do more live events, and more than likely I will be up in the Portland area. Nothing planned yet, but if that happens, on my website, sergeiboutenko.com, the events section will be resurrected and you will know. You can also sign up to my newsletter if you want, because I usually, talk about it there, or follow me on Instagram. Fantastic answer, Sergei. Much appreciated. Okay. Love that. Thanks for all the info. I'm off to karate, but we'll check in again later. Awesome. Have a great karate session, Angela. I grow comfrey, not for humans, plantain, which is for human consumption. I give these to my New Zealand bunnies. In turn, the bunnies put out a lot of poo, which is a great fertilizer. Deborah, that sounds like the definition of a symbiotic relationship. Congratulations. Do you eat plantain? Yes, I do eat plantain. Plantain is one of the most it's one of the most advanced greens, and so not everybody's going to enjoy it, but it is very nutritious, and I like to blend it in smoothies. See, my approach to wild edibles, I feel, is different than other foragers in that I just cram them into everything that I already eat. So I make a delicious meal, and then I think the wild edible is almost like an afterthought. It's like, I'm making this stew. What kind of wild edible can I throw into it? And plantain actually works really good in stew, works good in smoothies. It works in recipes where the taste gets masked because it has a very strong chlorophyll taste. And so, yes, I do eat plantain, and I just cram wild edibles into everything that I eat. Did I miss anything?
Mm-mm.
Not yet. Oh, look at that. 90% of people are saying, yes, read your own book. Noted.
Somebody got another one.
Okay. Let's see. I have used plantain very successfully long-term for severe sinusitis in a tincture I buy in a shop. Basketball fan, that's awesome. Have you tried making your own salve? I have a video about that as well. You basically just take plantain and either blend it with a little bit of water or water and avocado if you want it to be like more of a creamy, sticky salve. And then it's absolutely positively free, because sometimes these salves, you get charged an arm and a leg when somebody else sells it to you. So if you want homework after this live chat, next time you see plantain growing, give it a go. Buy a Vogel company. I'm not really sure what that. Oh, buy a Vogel company. That's who makes the tincture. Got it.
Right chance again.
Has the transition from raw to some cooked food to some meat affected you? Pros and cons, please. So for those that don't know, still, I've been talking about it in videos on podcasts and books, but I eat meat and I eat cooked food now. This has been the last 10 years of my life. And yes, there's been some really positive changes. I'm still making sense of it all. So I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying that the more I learn about food, the more I realize that there is to know, the more I realize that I don't know. And I have no interest in telling other people how to eat, but really identifying how my body functions the best. And so I've come to realize that the raw food diet works miracles because you cut out the bullshit. You cut out processed food, you cut out things that are poisonous, and you're essentially cleansing. And so for when people go raw, they start thriving. This is different for everybody, but some people thrive for 6 months, some people thrive for years. In my family, we thrived for years until we started running into symptoms of less than perfect health. Um, some of these include things like tooth decay, warts, lower immunity, which then looks like you getting colds more frequently. There's a big long list. Nothing too major, but also nothing that's signs that that show you that something clearly could be better. And so for me, that moment came in the early 2000s when I started craving meat, and then I acted on it and I tried eating meat. I felt really freaking good instantly, despite everybody telling me that I would feel bad and that I was essentially a sinner and my body was going to punish me because it was so pure after so many years of not eating meat. And so I noticed that, and I've never looked back. Now, right now, carnivore is kind of picking up steam. And if I've learned anything with my untraditional upbringing, is that I don't really want to bounce from one extreme to the next. I want to find my golden mean. I want to live somewhere kind of in the middle and learn how to be moderate as a human, because that's always served me the best when I've employed moderation. And so there's this push now to go in the opposite direction and only eat meat. For myself, I've realized that when I eat too much meat, then I also don't feel good. So there has to be this balance. And for me, the balance is lots of fruits and vegetables, meat 2 times a day, probably not every meal, but 2 times a day, lots of exercise, lots of water, lots of green smoothies. And sometimes when I say that, people think like Sergei is now crushing McDonald's, Big Macs and stuff. But no, I don't eat fast food. It's not even part of my lexicon. Whenever I get hungry, I'm never like, should we go to In-N-Out? It's just not even something I think about. It's more like I cook up a grass-fed steak that my neighbor grew. I personally knew the cow. I personally know the neighbor. We have a whole freezer full of it. And then I go in the garden, pick lots of greens, lots of fresh tomatoes, supplement with wild edibles. And that kind of diet just makes me feel like a Superman. And so I'm just experimenting with it and also recognizing that I may be wrong. Just plain and simple. The jury's still out what humans should eat. I think Michael Pollan says it best. He has a book called The Omnivore's Dilemma. And there's a line in there that says that basically what to eat is still our dilemma. We're still evolving. We still haven't really figured it out. And I believe he's correct in that. I'm still figuring it out. And I won't really know if I got it right or not until I guess I'm on my deathbed. So ask me again in 50 or 60 years. Wow, Sergey, I'm in the process of going keto carnivore. How did you get your teeth to heal? I asked because I went crazy on smoothies, probably the too much fruit, and had some teeth decay, but I still eat grains also. I got my teeth to heal by going to the dentist. And truth be told, I'm not by any means like my teeth were mismanaged in my youth, and I have lots of teeth problems, and that is just a fact. And so if anybody's looking at Sergey as to how to figure out how to heal his teeth, don't, because I still have a lot to learn. Is there any wild edibles that you came across that had severe reactions to? So I've been eating foraged plants since 1998, and I have had a couple reactions. Nothing, I don't know what your definition of severe is. I've had headaches and I've puked. And a couple times it happened after I ate a farmer's market bought um, baby green mix. So it was very hard for me to figure out what even caused the reaction. It could have been a wild edible that was accidentally picked, or maybe I don't know. And so those experiences actually helped me figure out one of my three, those are one of my three rules for foragers to follow. So the first rule, if we can quickly go through those, is don't eat something if you don't know what it is. This is common sense. And it applies not only to foraged foods, but all foods. If you're eating something from a box and you start reading the ingredients and they're not ingredients you can pronounce, maybe figure out what those ingredients are before proceeding. Same thing goes with foraging. If you've never tried something, if you don't know what it is, it's a bad idea to put it in your mouth. That's how you stay safe. Rule number 2 is try all new foods in small amounts. We've already talked about this. It's just a good idea to experiment slowly. And then rule number 3 is to not mix too many different plants when in the beginning stages, so that if you do have a reaction, you'll be able to weed out where it came from. And so, eating that bagged lettuce and then puking my brains out taught me a very valuable lesson. Don't mix too many things in a recipe because it's going to be very hard to figure out what caused it. And then listen to your body. Just because Sergei, again, I'm going to say this ad nauseum over and over again, I always do, but just because Sergei or somebody else or some other expert tells you this is really good for you, eat it, don't follow yourself first. Okay. I've noticed when you eat clean and you crave a certain food, your body is telling you you need that food. This will help keep you healthy. Yes, I agree with that. The thin leaf plantain grows all over the roadside in Ireland, but I am worried about pollution. Okay, so let's talk about wild edibles and pollution. Lance leaf plantain or thin leaf plantain, as basketball fan is talking about here. It's just another variety of plantain. It's very beneficial for skin ailments. It's good to eat, but you also want to keep in mind your surroundings. So a good forager always keeps that in mind. Native Americans, there's like 2 or 3 different factions of wild edibles. There's like the scientific toxicology kind of approach everything with a pen and paper. And then there's like the Native American approach, which is probably what I identify to more. It makes more sense to me, where you approach things cautiously, you engage all your senses. And one of your senses is hearing and sight. And so when you're foraging, you always want to assess the area first. Does the area look toxic? Like, for example, a golf course is a pristine place. It's beautiful, right? Luscious greens rolling for as far as the eye can see. But I look at it and I kind of get skeptical. It's like too good to be true. Why is it so green? Why is it so manicured? And so that is nature conveying information to you that something is going on here. Similar road where you see cars driving, if you just observe that situation, you'll notice that when it's raining, it'll rain on the car. The car will then leak fluids, which will then drain into the ditch, which will then affect the plants that grow in it. And so if you're going to harvest next to a roadway, I recommend going uphill where things can't drain, and also create enough distance from yourself and the road. So, how this kind of in practical terms, if I'm driving down the road and I see some plantain that I want to harvest and it's right by the road, I go, there's plantain growing here. More than likely, if it's growing right on the road, it's also going to be growing 50 feet that way. And so I'll pull my car over and just go for a little walk and harvest the plantain there. Make sense? So just kind of distance yourself from the road a little bit and think about it, but don't let it paralyze you, because the truth is that we live on a planet that's more and more polluted every day. There's planes flying overhead. They're dropping fuel. There's cars driving. They're dropping fuel. The list goes on. And if you just worry too much about being, clean and pure, you're going to be fasting and dying of hunger, because the truth of the matter is that all of our food grows in the Midwest, or, all over parts of the world where there are roadways near it and cities near it, et cetera, et cetera. And so we just have to pick and choose our battles. And so I feel that if you make educated guesses and educated attempts to eat more pure, that's the best you can do, and just kind of leave it at that. I'm allergic to most fruit. I'm sorry to hear that. Fruit is delicious, and if you're allergic to most of it, then I'm glad that you found that out, and likely stay away from fruit. I love speaking Russian. It's my second favorite language after English. Wow. I love hearing that. Russian, I don't speak enough Russian. Russian was my first language, and now my family is like we've all grown up. A lot of the Russian people in Southern Oregon moved away, and so I wish I had more chances to practice it because I don't want to lose it. I think being bilingual or trilingual is an amazing life expanding what do you call that? Skill. Let's use the word skill. Um, it's sometimes right now there's like basically World War III happening between the US and America, right? Through the Ukraine. And so I watch the news sometimes when I feel like getting depressed. I watch the news in Russian and English, and then I kind of figured that both people are lying and the answer is somewhere in the middle. My wife's like, do not talk about this. I won't talk about this too long, but I think it's interesting just how the brain switches, So like I'll be listening to an English program and then I'll listen to a Russian program, and it's just funny that the brain can just compartmentalize different languages. I think it's amazing. The human mind is an amazing thing. Boom. So we have about 15 minutes left. I allocated an hour for this. And so we're kind of coming. Do you have a favorite wild edible that grows in the Pacific Northwest for making tea, fresh or dried? I do indeed. And that wild edible is called pineapple weed. It's wild chamomile, as well as lemon balm. So you could take and dry some pineapple weed and some lemon balm and maybe even some raspberry leaves. Dry that in a dehydrator or just in the sun. Kind of put them in a bag or a jar, and voila, you have the most fragrant, delicious, most nutritious wild edible tea that people charge, tens of dollars for per pound. Pamela says, very true. Both sides are lying. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of deceit out there, and it's very hard to figure out what to believe. That's why I just watch nature and observe the natural world, and it always lifts my spirits because trees and plants and animals, they don't know that the internet exists. They don't know that people have artificially made borders and that people fight each other. They just exist symbiotically and in harmony. And when I got my dog and I started hiking with her every morning, it brought me back to that. It's like, this is real. Social media, not so real. Nature is real. Stinging nettles, why should one pick only the tops of 3 leaves? Okay, well, this is more of an issue of meristems and not really so much an issue of stinging nettles. So a plant, as it grows tall, the bottom of the plant has to become harder so that it can sustain more growth. And so the reason people say eat the first 3 leaves of nettles and not the rest of the plant is just simply due to the fact that the plant will become woody and unpleasant. And it's also going to have diminished nutritional qualities. It's kind of like building a house. If you build a house that's 1 story, the foundation can be a little shaky, but if you start building 2nd story, 3rd story, then the foundation really has to be solid. So as a plant grows, the meristematic parts, the growing parts of plants, which have all the carbohydrates and the sugar and all the nutrients, they typically end up being at the top of a plant or on the edges of a plant, at the tips of the leaves. They're typically softer and they're typically lighter green in color. And so as foragers, we also have to become really good at identifying the growing parts of plants because they're more nutritious, more delicious, and generally have less stingers and stuff. So the reason is that. So far, 92% of people say I should read my own book, wifey. I like it. What?
I was one of the no's.
Oh, Kylie said, "What?" My wife was one of the no's. My wife thinks like if somebody else is going to do it and it's going to be no more work for me, then why would I make work out of it? She's a smart lady. She might be right. I worked in a community garden before for a couple of years. I used to take home fresh lemon balm leaves and make the most beautiful tea. See, basketball fan agrees. Lemon balm is amazing. It's a mint relative. It spreads like wildfire. It's absolutely delicious in tea, and it's also really good in smoothies. One of the things I love advocating for is a basil bombing or mint bombing your smoothie. If you've been drinking the same green smoothie over and over again, sometimes you want a little bit more pizzazz. You want to mix it up. And so just take a handful of something very fragrant like basil, lemon balm, parsley, and throw it into a smoothie. And it's going to be delicious. It's going to renew the whole experience of drinking a smoothie for you. Thank you. Hey, what's your favorite way you'd like to buy? What's your favorite way you'd like us to buy your book? I'm done procrastinating on buying it today. Jimmy, thank you so much for asking. Amazon, unfortunately. Amazon destroyed all my personal book sales. I literally lose money when I sell my own book, and that's not a good business model. So I just direct everybody to Amazon. And if you want to support me the most, then you can also buy ebooks from my website because I get a large chunk of of that profit. And every penny that I earn literally goes back to YouTube, back to creating more content. I'm kind of like a startup, a 15-year-old startup. I just, that's what I do. Sometimes local bookstores. Yes, if you really, my wife, that's thank you for reminding me that. So if you really want to fight the system while supporting me at the same time, go to your local bookshop and ask for them to carry my book and then buy it from them. This Wild Edibles book. And I'm actually working on another one right now, which won't be out anytime soon, but that one will be called Wild Edibles Test Kitchen. It's going to be another recipe book. And it's going to I'm basically all of the recipes that I film for the YouTube series and will continue filming will be in this book. And it's going to take me about 2 years to write. So look for that one too. In 2025. What do you guys think about these AMAs? Are they helpful? Are you getting stuff out of them? Should I do them from time to time? And if so, what would be a good frequency? Twice a year, once a year, 4 times a year? And Deborah says, great book. Thanks, Deborah. We know you have to go soon, but we appreciate your life story and the way you have shared with us humanity. Спасибо. Пожалуйста. I just did a podcast with my buddy Nathan Maingard, and he was kind of praising me for telling the truth. And I even took it. And then I've been thinking about that ever since. It's like, it seems silly. I mean, that's just what we're supposed to do, right? We're just supposed to treat other people like we want to be treated and speak honestly and talk to each other and listen to each other. And I'm the happiest when I do it. So it's actually kind of a selfish motivation because when I just live my life according to my own principles, I am not an anxious person and I find lots of mystery in life and living is exciting. And then when I go off on a tangent and forget my true nature, that's what makes me unhappy and anxious. And so I just want to enjoy life. So I'm going to do my best to be honest with myself and others. And You are a daddy now, Sergei. I remember you said your beloved was pregnant. No, I'm not a daddy. We do not have kids, so I don't know where you heard that, but we're working on it, and I hopefully will be a daddy soon. So I'll take that as like a good omen for the near future. As much as possible, I'm addicted to your channel, LOL. Then, well, thank you very much. There's about 550 videos to keep you busy. And as I move forward, I'm going to just work diligently to create better content, more content. And then maybe, just maybe, eventually I will find somebody else to partner up with me, and then we can churn out more. Thus far, I'm a one-man band. I do everything myself, and so it takes a little bit of time. It takes me about 11 days to produce one episode of Wild Edibles Test Kitchen, and so that's why it's kind of slow going, but I'm ironing out my kinks. I built out a home studio, which you see behind me. So that's one studio. I'm going to have a kitchen studio here shortly. And the idea behind that is I want to decrease how long it takes to set up and break down. It's much easier to go in and push some buttons, turn some lights on, and get rolling than have to spend 2 hours setting it up every time. It's unsustainable and unrealistic. And so I've been kind of a little MIA from YouTube lately, but the reason behind it is because I'm doing all the back end work. I'm trying to make an efficient way to work. And so I hope to create a lot more content moving forward here. Continue the AMA. You seem like a very nice person. You have a nice conversation style. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that feedback. I really have enjoyed the AMA and found it helpful and inspiring from both yourself and your other subscribers. Awesome. I love it. Oops. Sorry, Sergey. I'm happy you're working on it. That's really good feedback. See, this is a dialogue, and you guys are proving it here and now. You think you're asking me questions, but I'm asking you questions, and I'm learning and I'm improving. So thank you very much for that. Shall we wrap? Things are kind of wrapping down. It's been 57 minutes. I'm going to say let's end it there. And, subscribe to my channel for more videos that are just like this, but totally different. Hit that bell for notifications. One of the things that YouTube continuously does is they seem to be separating us from our subscribers and making it hard to connect. And so you really have to hit that bell for notifications so that when a new video gets uploaded or a new live stream gets scheduled, you'll be notified. Otherwise, I'll just be shouting into the void. And then what I don't like, my least favorite thing is after an event happens or after, people miss it and then they get angry at me and they're like, why didn't you let us know? I tried really hard, but on social media, I just find that my voice isn't flying as far, maybe because there's more competition, maybe there's more internal, policies that these companies are implementing. But one way to combat that is just to hit that notification bell, because I don't really publish on a schedule. And so you will miss my content if you don't get notified. That's it. That's all. Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate your time. I hope you got something out of this. I will get better as these things continue. And I also really, really appreciate you weighing in on the audiobook, which will be hopefully happening here in the next couple months. Okay. Ciao. Love you guys. Bye.